Hello, good day, and welcome to the X's and O's with Greg Cosell, the guy over there in the swaggy NFL Films hoodie, which I want one, please. I did the top 10 stuff like a decade ago, and they sent me a couple of NFL Films t-shirts and I just wore them out. So Greg's got the NFL Films swag, and Greg, we're ready to talk Week 18, the last regular season week of the 2023 NFL season, now that it's 2024. And Greg, 20 teams remain in Super Bowl contention. 5 playoff berths remain unclaimed, the most entering the final week since there were 7 in
Wow, I didn't
2020.
even realize that. See,
And
that's
and
something I don't take that note of, but that's okay.
4 division crowns are still undecided, the most entering a season finale since there were also 4 in 2014. But before we get into like the teams that are playing for the most right now, I wanted to look at the two defending Super Bowl teams, Chiefs and the Eagles. And if you were to, Dr. Greg Cosell,
Yeah.
put a pathway through for either team to get back to the Super Bowl. And I don't even know if it's possible right now, but if you were to do so, I want to start with Chiefs Chargers. Now, the Chiefs have already clinched the AFC West. I have little faith in the Chiefs' ability to create a functional passing game in time for the postseason. But I mean, honestly, and I told you this yesterday on the phone, I think it'd be a 6-10 team without Steve Spagnuolo. And I want to get into, and I know we've both watched these plays. The Bengals' final drive in that 25-17 Chiefs win, there was a 5-play sequence, 50 clock seconds, 5-0, where the Chiefs had 4 sacks, 2 by Justin Reed, the safety, 1 by George Karlaftis, and 1 by Chris Jones. So, Spagnuolo alternated between cover 2 and 2-man on the 4 sacks, which was smart because that's kind of been Jake Browning's kryptonite, so to speak. But I know you've watched those plays, and just give us a larger sense of how Spagnuolo is and always has been so versatile with his blitzes and his pressures, and how, like on the Chris Jones sack, he had 2 guys, and Browning said this after the game. It's like, they're spying me a lot, which is weird. It felt weird to Browning. That Chris Jones sack, they had Bolton and Reed drop into not coverage, but sort of a spy look. Just your overall sense of what you saw from those 4 Spagnuolo designed sacks.
Well, it's just interesting before we do that what you just said about the Chiefs, and you believe that you're not sure they can have a functional offense. Think about that for a minute. They have
I
the
know.
quarterback who many would say is a Hall of Famer right now based on his career, and
Yep.
you just said that not flippantly, but it's
No.
a sort of a statement of kind of truth at this point in the season. We're not sure what their offense really is. I mean, this past week, and one thing I learned from many people over the years is teams normally try to get back on track offensively running the ball. And we saw the Chiefs try to do that this past week with Isaac Pacheco. And was he good.
He's an angry man when he runs.
Oh God. He reminds me of, and I don't know, I'm sure people remember this player. He reminds me of Marion Barber, the way he
Yes.
runs. Whereas if every run is going to be the last run of his career. But
When Tyler Algier came out of BYU, that was my comp for him.
yeah,
Marion Barber.
I think I said Isaac. It's not Isaac, but it's Pacheco.
Isaiah.
Isaiah, yeah. Anyway, I was thinking of Isaac Seumalo because I did a piece on the Steelers run game that I'll be narrating, so I think that was in my head. Anyway, talking about those 5 sacks, and by the way, they were not spying on Jake Browning. There was 2-man coverage in which the players that those defenders had stayed in to pass protect. So therefore, the players who are playing them man to man, they either will add into the pass rush or they can stay where they are, just to be in position to react to Browning if he were to leave the pocket. But they're not spies. It wasn't a spy tactic. The one that was the most interesting to me was the first Reed sack that came with just over 2 minutes remaining, because there was a disguise element to that. They lined up initially in single high safety look, and they went with late rotation to cover 2 with Edwards, who's normally the dime safety. He was the middle hole defender, and McDuffie, the slot corner, became a half field safety along with Connor. They ran essentially with a 4-man zone exchange concept. Reed was a rusher on that play, not part of the underneath coverage. Dana dropped out opposite Reed, so he became an underneath hook defender. But Reed was a rusher. He was the 4th rusher in the 4-man zone exchange concept, and he just sidestepped Mixon's block and he sacked Browning. But that was the one that had disguise and late rotation to it. The next two, uh, the next two, the first one was two-man coverage, and that was a little different concept because what they did there, they showed a six-man pressure front. This was the very next play, by the way, when
Right.
2nd and 5 became 3rd and 12. The very next play, so they went with a two-man coverage concept, but what was really interesting about this is they actually had Karlaftis from his wide 9 alignment to the boundary. He was matched on the back in coverage, and Reed was a blitzer. He
Mhm.
blitzed outside of Karlaftis from
Right
the
off the edge.
boundary. So he was a blitzer. He was not a coverage player. And it was a five-man pressure scheme. So it was kind of a two-man, but not, it was they were kind of fudging it a little bit because
Yeah.
obviously you can't play pure two-man in with five-man pressure. But it was kind of a cool thing the way they sort of had Karlaftis drop out as a pure coverage defender and Reed as a blitzer. But Browning had no defined throw within timing, and Reed ran him down with help from Bolton, who then added in as a green dogger because the way the Bengals played it is they actually had the running back and the tight end offset next to Browning because they wanted to protect.
My favorite part of that play was how Reed threw the running back out of the way. He just went,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
of course, the final two were more individual plays. I mean, they had cover two on the Karlaftis sack, but he beat the left tackle Brown off the edge. And then the final one was just a Jones sack. They went two-man. That's probably where Browning thought they were spying, but they weren't spying. Bolton
Okay.
was matched on the back, Reed on the tight end. Both stayed into block, but Jones, from his three technique alignment, beat the left guard Volson so quick that
Yep.
Browning had no chance.
Yeah. And the Karlaftis sack, that was the backside of the pocket. And with Orlando Brown, that's always been kind of where the problem area is.
Yeah,
Last half.
Orlando Brown's not a great one-on-one pass protector. Never
No.
really has been. We know he always wanted to play left tackle. That's why he had left the Ravens to go to the Chiefs. But now he's obviously with the Bengals. But he's not a great pass protector one-on-one.
I think when the Chiefs got him, I went back and looked at all the sacks he'd given up, and all 7 of them at that point were the back half of the pocket. So that's the thing. But anyway, so if the Chiefs are going to get there, it's going to be on the strength of their defense. And as
And the
once
run
again,
game, maybe. I
yeah,
mean, again, I think many of us or many people expect that when the playoffs start, that the pass game and Mahomes will, because the track record and what he's done in the past is so strong that all of a sudden it's going to click. No one can answer that one way or the other, but up to this point, it hasn't happened. So based on what we've seen, there's nothing this year that strongly suggests that, because I assume they're not going to play this week, or if they do, they'll play a series. But then when they get to the playoffs, that all of a sudden the pass game will be brilliant. Maybe it will be. Mahomes certainly, like we said, the track record is outstanding. But this has been a tough year.
well, when you have Marquez Valdez-Scantling running mesh, and he's like openly physically complaining to Mahomes after a drop in which it's like 6 inches past the numbers, I don't know. I have my doubts. Anyway, Eagles at Giants. Basically, the Eagles win the NFC East if they win, and the Cowboys lose to the Commanders. There are some tie scenarios. Basically, the Eagles
Right.
just
It's going to be one or the other. Yeah.
and I'm just going to leave it to you, Greg. The Eagles' run defense against the Cardinals, and it's something you have often said. Coaches will tell you what they think of their players or other players by what they do. Even against the Eagles' 5-man fronts, the Cardinals were sending 1 and 2 offensive linemen upfield to the second and third level. So they were looking at Eagles tape thinking, and Drew Petzing, their first-year OC, who I like a lot, saying, we can run these pulls and just gash them and not worry about it. And that's what happened.
Yeah. I mean, look, the bottom line is run game. If you're struggling in the run game, it's not usually profound, Doug. It's not complex. It's because your D line's not controlling the point of attack, and they're getting moved, which is happening to the Eagles. It's because your second level players are struggling with gap integrity, which often is the result of your first level defenders getting moved, and then missed tackles. It's really 3 things. It's not some magic thing here that occurs when a team can't stop the run particularly well. And, that's happened with the Eagles a little more recently. I don't know whether just a longer season has impacted players. But, Jordan Davis has played more snaps this year than my guess is they wanted him to. Or if they wanted him to, he's showing that it's been a bit of a struggle given the number of snaps he's playing.
Yeah.
Jalen Carter has not been as good recently as he was earlier in the season. Maybe the long season is getting to him. He's never played this much. And even at Georgia, where they have so many 5-stars, he did not play 60 snaps a game at Georgia. So, it's very possible that just the long season is wearing them out. We've discussed this before, that they've not been able to rush the quarterback at all this year. And I think that was totally unexpected. Coming off last year when they led the NFL in sacks by a wide margin, had more third down sacks than any team in the league. This year, they've not been able to rush the quarterback.
Well, a couple of things. Their 22.8% pressure rate this year is really middle of the pack. Last season, their pressure rate of 25.5% was the NFL second best behind the Cowboys.
What was it last year? What was the number?
25.5. 22.8
Right.
this year. Last season, they had 32 third down sacks. This season, they have 12.
Right. That's a big deal.
Yep.
And the thing is, their secondary can't handle the lack of a pass rush because, quite frankly, their secondary isn't very good. And that's an issue. So again, it's not being sarcastic or funny, but pass defense really comes down to two things. It's your ability to rush the quarterback and your ability to cover. They don't do either one particularly well. And when you can't rush the quarterback, the second one really becomes exacerbated. There's an SAT word for you. Exacerbated. Yeah.
Well, the other thing that I picked up, and the linebackers have been an issue all year. How many times the Cardinals ran outside and there's no contain out there? Everyone's running inside. It seems
so
like.
I mean, look, you can always talk about guys missing assignments and all. That's all part of it too. As I said, players not playing with the proper gap integrity and doing what they should do. But when all's said and done, if your first level defensive linemen are getting moved, you're going to have a hard time stopping the run.
Yeah. Real quick, have you seen some design changes since Matt Patricia took over to the benefit or detriment of the defense?
Well, first of all, they play a ton more dime. Dime has become kind of their third down package, which wasn't necessarily the case under Sean Desai. So this is something obviously Matt Patricia believes in, that he wants to play dime as a third down package. So that's there. As far as coverage, they've jumped back and forth in the games that he's coach. So again, that could be part of the Belichick approach, that each game is a different game and your opponent specific, because they've played man, high percentage man, they've played high percentage zone. They've kind of jumped back and forth. So it's hard to know exactly how he sees playing coverage with this particular group, but the secondary is a problem. I mean, they have no speed in the secondary. And again, not that we're going to spend time talking about the Giants but I will say this, the one thing that stood out with the Giants this past week against the Rams is with Tyrod Taylor, they actually looked like they had a professional passing game. There were intermediate and vertical route concepts, which there really weren't very many when DeVito was the quarterback. And they've got two receivers who can run, and that does present a concern for the Eagles because Slayton and Hyatt can run.
Tyrod has always been a guy with an interesting deep ball. It's not always perfect, but when it's on, it's on. So that can be a thing too.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into the big games. Texans at Colts. They are playing for the AFC South. I've been threatening all year to talk about the Colts defense, so now I'm just going to do it. They rank 18th in defensive DVOA, but they got some guys on that side of the ball. Indianapolis ranks 5th in the league with 49 sacks. They rank 2nd in the league behind the Vikings with 14 forced fumbles. I'm apologizing in advance. Odeyingbo has 12 sacks and 29 total pressures. Samson Ebukam has 10 sacks and 47 total pressures. He's an interesting player who frequently lines up right over the tackle or the tackle's inside shoulder. He had 3 sacks against the Patriots in Week 10, and nobody in New England's interior offensive line wanted anything to do with him. His third sack came on a TE stunt with defensive tackle Eric Johnson, another guy no one's talking about, where he pushed center James Andrews. This is Odeyingbo, by the way. Center James Andrews right into Mac Jones. Zaire Franklin, 128 tackles, 54 stops. EJ Speed, who made Shaq Leonard sort of fungible this season in Indianapolis, has 76 tackles and 43 stops. Julian Blackman has played really, really well this season. And they've got 2, I believe, rookie corners in Juju Brents and Jalen Jones, 7th-round rookie and a 2nd-round rookie.
Yep.
It's an up-and-down defense because they have so many young players, but you can see, and it's like this predominant cover three defense because it's Gus Bradley. But when they're on, they're really interesting.
Well, what's interesting about them is they're totally different on first and second down and then third down
Mhm.
because they are not a blitz team at all, basically, on first and second down. But on
Right.
third down, their blitz percentage goes up significantly, significantly. And I know it's Gus Bradley, and we know we all have a sense of what we think Gus Bradley is, but sometimes coaches change as well, and
Mhm.
you don't necessarily think about him as a blitz guy, but on third down, their blitz percentage is closer to being among the league leaders than it is to being among the bottom. Whereas on first and second down, their blitz percentage is near the bottom. They hardly ever blitz. So in a sense, there's two different defenses that they play. It's what you get on first and second down, and then what you get on third down.
Mhm.
And and they've got some good players. I mean, Buckner's a really good player
Oh,
inside. EJ Speed. You mentioned EJ Speed. I noticed him a year or so ago. He's only maybe a third-year player, and every time he played linebacker, which wasn't many snaps prior to this year, I'd say, God, this guy, I notice him.
yeah.
And clearly he made Shaq Leonard expendable, and Leonard's had a good year. And if I'm not mistaken, Franklin, who last year became a really good player,
He
I
blew
think,
up. He blew up in my tape study last year.
yeah, and I think he leads the NFL in tackles, and he's one of those players that every time you watch them, he's there. He's a really good player, plays every snap.
Yep. And those tackle stats can be, especially with linebackers, can be misleading because,
Right.
you get a lot of tackles by just being in our, like somebody misses something and you're just sort of in the way. That's not him.
No, he's a really good player. So, and it's interesting they're doing this playing with two rookie corners that they're willing to blitz. And again,
Yeah.
blitzing, there's so many ways to blitz. People automatically think blitz man coverage. That's not necessarily the case.
Oh, no. So yeah, they faced CJ Stroud in week 2. That was kind of after Stroud faced Baltimore in the first game. That's not going to be easy.
Yeah, I remember watching Stroud week 2. It's funny, it was a long time ago, but I remember watching him. That was the game where I said to myself, "Oh, this guy's pretty interesting."
That
Because
was
I
that
remember,
was the raised eyebrow game for everybody. Like, 30 completed 30 of 47 passes for 384 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He was back against the Titans last week after missing 2 games with a concussion. He had a 21-yard pass to Nico Collins in that game. We'll put it up where he just dotted the ball on an outcut past Elijah Molden and Sean Murphy Bunting. And my favorite part of this was you could see Murphy Bunting jumping up and down in frustration after the catch, which is what Stroud can do to you with his ball plays. Like we were on this guy and he just went bang, right, which, we've seen Stroud do that all season. So very interesting series of matchups there.
yeah, the point I was going to make is I remember watching Stroud um, in that game week 2, and again, it was a long time ago, but that was the game where I thought, oh wow, he's making some timing and anticipation throws and seeing coverage that again. It was in his second game as a pro. You don't know this stuff until you see it in the NFL because NFL defenses are totally different than college defenses, with very very few exceptions. So I'm thinking, God, he's seeing coverage rotation. He's reacting to it instantaneously. That was the game where I said, "Oh, okay, I think this guy could be a really good player."
We got a guy.
Yeah, I thought this past week, with his first game back, their pass game approach was kind of streamlined. I
Yeah.
thought they wanted him to get comfortable again after missing 2 games, but obviously he's had a phenomenal season.
Yeah, it wasn't explosive. It didn't have to be except for that 21-yard play. And I will put it up just so you can watch Sean Murphy Bunting have a temper tantrum after that. What are you going to do? Sometimes you tip your hat and move on.
Well, that's the way it works in the NFL.
Yep. Rams at 49ers. Niners have the NFC's 1 seed, so I have no idea who they're going to play.
Not many.
The Rams are guaranteed a wild card berth. And Greg, another defense we have not talked about, the Rams defense. You might not be aware of interior defensive lineman Kobe Turner from Wake Forest, who was one of my kind of just standout guys in this draft process. You should be pretty soon when the Rams hit the playoffs, which they will do. And let's throw Byron Young into the discussion. You talked Byron Young up something fierce this summer. Young and Turner have 46 and 45 pressures this season, respectively, which ranks 3rd and 4th among all rookie defenders in the NFL. Will Anderson Jr. of the Texans is 1. Tui Pelotu of the Chargers, another guy I really like, are 1st and 2nd. Turner is a 6'3", 288-pound player with really nasty hands, great leverage. Reminds me a bit of Geno Atkins, who was also a mid-round pick.
Right.
And Young has really nice range. He'll get to the quarterback in space. Turner leads all rookies with 11 sacks. He has more quarterback disruptions than Jalen Carter. Now, that's with like 100 more snaps, but still. Ernest Jones also might be one of the best linebackers no one's talked about over the last 2 seasons. So when we get into, we've talked about the Rams offense. I want to get more into their run game pretty soon. Certainly the passing attack, we know what that is. But this Rams defense, corner's a little light. Linebacker might be at safety. I don't know, but that they will get after people. They have 117 total pressures since week 10, tied with the Buccaneers for 8th best in the league. So that's coming. It's advancing.
Yeah, no, Turner's a guy that stood out from the beginning of the season, and he's very effective with TT stunts with Aaron
Yeah,
Donald. Where Turner can be both the penetrator and the looper. He has some dominant pass rush snaps when he's 1-on-1. He's
yeah.
got really light feet. He's got great quickness. He's stood out right from the beginning of this season. You mentioned Byron Young, a player I really like coming out of the University of
He was a
Tennessee.
Cosell favorite, I think.
He was. I really did like his tape. And seeing him at the combine, the way he moved, his flexibility, the way he bent, I liked him. But the other player I think is that's really worth mentioning, just because there's a uniqueness to the way he plays, given his size, and that's Michael Heck. He's one of the most important players on this defense. He's probably close to 300 pounds, but they use him to be a coverage defender a significant percentage of his snaps. He's shown awareness to play in zone. He's run with backs out of the backfield. He can rush the quarterback if asked to. He's a really interesting player to me. Now, you mentioned the corners. For the last, I don't know the number of weeks, it's got to be 9 or 10. They have played with Witherspoon as their boundary corner. They were playing with Kendrick as the field corner. He seems to have been benched, I guess, for Kobe Durant, who's now playing, the field corner spot. Kendrick does get snaps. Lake is their slot corner. So, people see these names and they feel like they're not very good there. And I'm sure teams feel that they can test them. But overall, this defense has played well. I think Raheem Morris, he plays, one of the thing that's interesting about them is they're one of the higher percentage true high safety coverage defenses in the NFL, playing cover 2 and all the variations of quarters. Without getting into all the details, there's
Right.
many variations of quarters. Now on third down, they will play a higher percentage of single high. So another, as is the case with a lot of teams, Doug, you get to third down and things are different.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But that's, against the 49ers backups, but nonetheless, that Rams defense will be interesting when we get to the playoffs. Bills and Dolphins are playing for the AFC East. I wanted to write more about the Dolphins when I watched Dolphins Ravens, but the Ravens kept pulling me back in. So the few plays I want to discuss. Tua Tagovailoa hit Tyreek Hill on a quick 12-yard slant with 13:38 left in the first quarter. Roquan Smith was late to the ball, and he discussed it after the game how he didn't get over quickly enough to stop it. Dolphins tried that same basic play with 2:01 left in the second quarter. Smith was all over it. So it's just another one of those. He's a great player, and they're so tight with everything. The second play, and this was what I called the holy bleep throw when we were talking on the phone, because Lamar hit a lot of wide open guys because the Dolphins
A
defense
lot of
did
wide
not.
open guys. Yeah, it was one of those games. The Dolphins defense had a tough time with just a lot of things in this game.
Yeah. But the 35-yard touchdown pass to Isaiah Likely with 132 left in the first half, this was how the Ravens capitalized on Smith's interception. 4th and 7, and at this point, the Ravens were only up 21-13 in a 56-19 game. 3-by-1 backside set, and all three of the receivers on the backside were running longer developing crossers, where Nelson Aguilar was crossing from the right side. Likely was the inside backside crosser, and he caught that pass from Lamar Jackson against a 3-man front with 5-man pressure, where Lamar had to step up in the pocket, make the throw when Likely could grab it. And again, safety Javon Holland is one of the best safeties, and Holland was right on him, and Lamar just made this bang-on throw. So that's Lamar this year. That's just the way it's been going.
Yeah, the Dolphins went cover 1 behind a 5-man pressure. They actually had Dolphins went with what we call dollar personnel. They had 7 DBs on the field. So 2 of the rushers were Needham and the dollar safety Jones. They were part of the pressure. They played cover 1, and as you said, Holland was matched on Likely, who ran the crosser from number 3 to trips. He had to step up because the pressure was front side, and he stepped up and he threw a good ball. And Likely, he just made a smooth one-handed catch, and he had room to run up the sideline.
Is that quarterbacky enough for us, Greg? Because I know that's the word everyone's using for
Yeah, I
Lamar.
don't get into that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
Doug. You know that.
some radio meathead.
I don't get into those kinds of things.
Yeah, I like to poke people with sticks once in a
Yeah.
while. Anyway, then, and this is where we get into Miami's defensive performance. Lamar's last two passing touchdowns were on the same concept, TE leak, where the tight end looks like he's blocking at first. The other receivers are going the other way, and the tight end just leaks out. And both times it was Likely and then Ricard both had cow pastures around them. So, not what you expect from a Vic Fangio defense. Now, we have
It's funny you say that because the play that I loved was the Hill 23-yard reception on 3rd and 10 in the third quarter. I thought that was a great concept, just a terrific concept by Monken. And I thought it was just, really, really well done.
We'll go into that real quick and we'll put it up. What did you like about it?
Well, it was 11 personnel. It was what we call 1-by-3, meaning that the tight end was the single receiver to the boundary. Hill was offset to trips, so that made it 4 strong. Now, the Dolphins out of nickel went cover 1, okay? So they matched Holland on Flowers, who was number 3 to trips. Now, the Ravens ran a man-beater concept. They had Flowers running the crosser, and they actually had a mesh with Hill coming out of the backfield and with the tight end Kolar, and they had a zone beater concept as well on the other side with Dagger. So it depended on what the coverage would be, but the coverage became cover 1, man. So they went with the man beater. And because there was some pressure on Jackson and he had to climb the pocket, I personally think he would have thrown the ball to Flowers on the crosser, which is a man beater as well, if he was clean in the pocket. But he had to climb the pocket in response to Chubb's outside pressure. And so he then threw to Hill, who was part of the mesh. People might look at this play and think Hill was a check down. Hill was not a check down. Hill was actually part of the mesh concept.
I find it, think about that 4th and 7 play where the Dolphins were in dollar personnel. What does that tell you about people's concept of the Ravens offense at this point? 7 DBs against 4th and 7. They're not going to run it. They trust Lamar.
Well, I don't know if that's what Fangio's thinking, but I think he's also thinking he wants better athletes on the field. What if he does run it? He wants better athletes on the field.
Sure. So the immovable force against the irresistible object, Greg, Miami's defense, which is now without Bradley Chubb, I believe, in ACL. So
yeah,
Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb are out. They have other guys who can rush, but yikes. Against the Bills offense, and Stephon Diggs, Greg, has seen his snap counts cut in half over the last 3 weeks. Don't know if that's an injury. There's nothing official. Joe Brady and Sean McDermott are making vague noises about wanting to get other receivers involved. I have not watched Buffalo's offense yet, but you mentioned that it kind of looked like a tire fire. What did you see from what they were doing or not doing against the Patriots?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't studied that game yet in detail, but I don't think their offense and their pass game has really been that good recently. Even with Joe Brady, it's funny. We have this conversation in the matchup room a lot, and you think about the offenses in the NFL pass games that are really good, okay? And then you think, why are they really good? It's the route concepts, it's the spacing, it's, and you think of teams like the Rams, like the Lions, you just see clean throws for the quarterback. You don't see that very often for the Bills. Now, I personally think Josh Allen is a part of this in the sense that he tends to leave the pocket too early. And I think he's been doing that more this year. There was a time where I thought, that, okay, he's settling in. He's becoming a quarterback that has the ability to be special off script, but that he's going to let the offense work for him. There are times this year I just don't feel he's letting the offense work for him as much as he needs to in order to be consistently successful. So he's part of that. So overall, their pass offense has not been that good over the last month or so. I couldn't tell you what the issue is with Diggs. There's no question he hasn't been on the field as much. He certainly hasn't been as productive. But I think their pass offense as a whole has not been as productive either.
Right. Well, how coach speak is McDermott was saying, well, we're kind of resting him and getting other guys involved because we want to be at full strength for the playoffs. I never know what that means.
I guess you're going to find out this week because barring anything crazy in a game, again, special teams touchdowns, Tua throwing picks early in the game, where it's a short field for the Bills and they go ahead big. But if it's a normal game, I think it's going to have to be a Josh Allen game. This is
Yep.
not going to be, this is not a James Cook game. This is going to have to be a Josh Allen game. And by that, I don't mean he's going to have to drop back 55 times, but I don't think they can win this game with Josh Allen going 15 for 23 for 152 yards.
No.
I think this will have to be a Josh Allen game.
Might be a Rasul Douglas game. What a pickup he's been for them. That the cornerback, the veteran
Yeah,
cornerback.
and it's a
Well,
division game, so the Bills will have a read for sure on
mhm.
that Dolphins offense. Which by the way, everybody has a read on it. That's the thing that always I find intriguing when people think, "Oh man, they didn't know." Everybody knows. It's
Yeah.
it's it's how they get to what they do, and
Mhm.
the challenges it presents to a defense. You can't just, like, if somebody motions outside of Tyreek Hill, you can't just say, "Oh, let's forget about him because they have Tyreek Hill." I think sometimes people think that's what defenses should do. Oh, let this guy just run free because they have Tyreek Hill. It doesn't work
Yeah.
like that. Everybody knows what they do. It just can be hard to stop at times. Other times, teams do make good plays against it. Like the Roquan Smith interception this week was a really good example of how um, Tua drop back, wanted to throw within timing, and if you notice the play, Doug, if you can visualize it and
Yeah.
remember it, he paused he just didn't feel comfortable within the timing of the drop and the throw to turn it loose, and that fraction of a second allowed Smith to make the pick. If he was able to throw that without that, Smith's not making the pick. But for whatever reason, Tua just didn't feel comfortable turning it loose, in his normal timing, and that allows Smith to make the pick. Those are the kinds of things you have to do, against the Dolphins. You have to take away the pure timing
Yep.
of those first window throws, those first window reads, and if you can do that, you have a good chance.
Well, that was the when I was talking about Baltimore's our defense before. They had a 12-yard slant to Hill, second pass of the game where Smith didn't get over in time. They rushed 4 and dropped 7 on the interception. I believe they rushed 3 and dropped 8, and maybe that extra defender
That's very possible.
gave Tua just enough pause, and Roquan Smith got over there that time, but it was pretty much the same play.
Yeah, I mean, and they're built on that. Those are their throws, and they hit those, and they'll still hit them. It's not as if you're going to take them away totally, because they're really good doing it with their personnel packages, their formations, and their use of motion. As you know,
Yeah,
they use motion more than any team in the league, and certainly in the pass game more than any team in the league. So they're not an easy defense tactically to play against, but you know what you have to do. It doesn't mean you're going to stop them on every play.
right. By the way, that get back to the Ravens for a minute. The Zay Flowers 75-yard touchdown. And I know the Ravens have done this before, but
That was another problem with motion, and they busted.
yeah, they busted a lot on motion. That's a problem. And the
They had a
Bill,
problem with motion in that game where
yep,
two guys weren't sure who they should respond to.
yeah, it's like, what offense are you guys practicing against again? You should be used to motion by now, but I digress. So Bears at Packers. Packers win, they're in. Obviously, the Bears are playing for next year. But Jordan Love, you said something interesting on the phone yesterday. You said that Jordan Love might be the best quarterback in the NFL since week 9. And you asked me to look at one play, and we'll get into that soon because I think I see what you meant by like, holy gosh. But since week 9, Love has completed 210 of 313 passes, 67.1% for 2,350 yards, 7.5 YPA, 19 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and a passer rating of 105.5. He has demolished the blitz. He's reading things really well. Just when you make a bold statement like that, Greg, I have to ask you to just open up and, okay,
Well,
why?
I mean, again, I
Why
didn't mean it.
that great?
See, to me, that's not a bold statement, Doug.
No,
Uh, I'm watching tape. I mean, it's not a bold statement at all.
to
He is
people who
settled
may not
in.
have been watching the Packers for whatever reason, like Jordan Love, what? That's what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, he's settled in. And by the way, he is an aggressive mindset thrower. So he is
Yeah,
still going to make some throws. He might throw a bad pick and then people say, "Oh, see, he's not great." He's an aggressive thrower, which, by
right.
the way, I believe you have to be in the NFL if you want to be a higher level quarterback. So, he'll do that. Maybe he'll do it this week. I don't know the answer to that, but he's clearly a more comfortable player. He's a high level traits guy, Doug. I mean, he's close to being, in that high tier of traits quarterbacks. Maybe he's not Josh Allen, maybe he's not Patrick Mahomes. I certainly don't think he throws it quite like Matthew Stafford, but he's
Well,
close to high level traits. So people need to understand how talented this kid is. But anyway, getting to that play,
mhm,
it ended the third possession. It was the 33-yard touchdown to
yep,
Jaden Reed on 2nd and 10. Okay.
yep,
And it came out of 11 2-by-2. And the Vikings were in what they're always in 4-2-5 big nickel. I
mhm,
mean, that's basically their foundation defense because Metellus plays literally on every snap.
mhm.
Now, the Vikings showed single high safety pre snap and then went rotation to cover two, and it was invert cover two to the field, meaning that the corner became the deep half player.
Mekhi Blackman dropped out to be the yeah.
Right. Hicks was the middle hole defender, and he opened to the field behind what we call a zone exchange pressure because Smith was the fourth rusher off the boundary edge, and the DN Jones dropped as an underneath hook defender. So the safety was the fourth rusher. So it wasn't a 4D line rush. The safety was the fourth rusher, but it was still a four-man rush.
Mhm.
Now, you do this because you're hoping that the quarterback doesn't read it because there's a lot of moving parts right at the snap. And you have about half a second to see what's going on. Love read the rotation immediately and he
Yep.
threw a strike to Reed from the slot to the field running the seam. I mean, that was a big time read and throw. And, it was a comfortable play. You could tell he was not hurried, he was not frenetic. He saw it, he knew where to go with the football, and the throw itself was big time.
It was very big time. I'll bring this up. Love had Harrison Phillips pushing center Josh Myers into the pocket, and Love made a little
Yep.
hop out of the pressure, right at his body, and made that throw with perfect velocity and timing. And it was an off balance, off platform throw. He didn't have
Yep.
his. He had to.
You
He had to.
almost jumped in the air and made,
Yeah, I know. I
yeah.
know. It was almost like a Tebow jump pass. He had to make it up as he went along. Well, what he said after the game is, yeah, they kind of disguised it, went to a cover two-ish coverage. We had four verts on, and I knew I was going to have Jay Reed right there. Kind of didn't see him at first where he was at, and then he came into my vision, so I just let it out there. Let him go and get it. It was an awesome play. And when you're seeing the field that way, these complicated things all of a sudden become simple, and that's kind of
Yeah,
where.
and it's funny, it just shows you, when you play at such a high level. I mean, he's an NFL quarterback. The way he could explain it as if it happened in slow motion, and
Yeah.
it happens at breakneck speed. And
Yep.
he said, "Well, I didn't see him right away, and then I saw him." I mean, don't forget, he's not sitting there going, "Oh, I can't see him. Oh yeah, oh there he is." It doesn't happen like that. It happens like that, and he saw the whole thing because everything middle closed, which is what the Vikings initially showed with a single high safety look, to middle open, present two different things to a quarterback. That's the way they're taught. Middle open is one thing, middle closed is something else. And you have to see that immediately.
Right. Well, I mean, he may have been too because the Vikings, as we've discussed before, they play the highest rated cover zero. They play the highest rated cover two. So he may have known like okay they're disguising it, but eventually it's going to be mofo.
And he may know that.
We'll
And
just
and
yeah
and the other thing too is for all the blitzing that the Vikings do, they do not play very much man coverage at all.
right. And you don't want to blitz Jordan Love anyway because his numbers against six or
Yeah,
more.
so he's played really really well. And like I said, he's still a first year player theoretically, and who knows what'll happen this Sunday? They're at
Yeah,
home playing Chicago. Obviously, they win. They're in. It's an interesting matchup, with Love and Fields, two guys that have been very interesting to sort of track their progress through the course of the season.
exactly. Well, Green Bay's defense, woof. We don't know how that's going to go, but the offense is humming, and it's humming with a lot of there. It's kind of like it's one of those younger teams, kind of like the Colts defense we talked about, the Rams, with a lot of young guys. There aren't a lot of, I mean, just marquee players here. They're
Well,
doing
they're
it
playing with, and don't forget, Christian Watson's hurt, so
right.
they're essentially playing with two second-year receivers, Dobbs and Samari Toure, who doesn't get a ton of snaps, but he's a second-year player, and
Mhm.
all the other receivers are rookies. Okay,
Yep.
I mean, and he's playing with two offensive tackles who are not their penciled-in starters when they went to training camp and figured, okay, these are our tackles. They're
Right.
playing with Zach Tom at right tackle, and they're playing with who's a fourth round pick, by the way, and they're playing with Rashad Walker out of Penn State, who's their left tackle. He was a seventh round pick, and you know there's no complaints from anybody about, oh well, we don't have great tackles. You got to line up and you got to play.
Um, Finally, Greg, to the Bears. Right now, the Bears have the first and 10th picks in the
So
2024
should
draft.
they take a quarterback, Doug?
Well, if you're in charge, if you're, I'm making you the Bears GM, Greg. You have a new gig. Do you stick with Fields and build around him, or you trade Fields for maybe a second or third round pick and avail yourself of your favorite rookie quarterback? I'm
It's
not
a
saying what do you think the Bears should do. I'm saying what do you think you would do?
ah, it's we had a conversation in my matchup office for 45 minutes last night about the same question. It's a really here's the way I see it, okay? Think of it this way. The Bears have played well over the last 5, 6 weeks. Okay, their defense has really come on.
Yes.
Eberflus is going to be there. Um, do you want to start over now? Again, it all depends, and I have to do my draft work. I watched all these quarterbacks this past summer from last year. It all depends on your feeling about the quarterbacks coming out, okay?
Right.
And Fields, clearly, because if you think that any one of these quarterbacks is, basically in your mind, you have to think that one of these guys is going to play like a first ballot Hall of Famer soon. Because the last thing Matt Eberflus wants to do, as they've played well down the stretch, and Fields has clearly improved, is start from scratch, Doug. And say what you want about, Caleb Williams, Drake May, whatever, they still are rookie quarterbacks. You're starting from scratch.
Right.
It's easy to say, well, look what CJ Stroud did. That was surprising. I mean, maybe it wasn't to some, but I don't think most people thought CJ Stroud would step right in and be this good this early. Maybe some thought that. I'm sure the Texans will publicly say, "Yeah, we thought that." No, they didn't. So the point is, Fields is he's one of the most fascinating players because there's a couple of things that he doesn't do well, and there's other things that are spectacular. I
Mhm.
mean, we know that he's a dynamic playmaker, whatever that means in
Yeah.
people's minds. What you would still be concerned about is his overall field vision and his capacity to process with the needed speed and clarity from the pocket.
Yep.
The term I would use is elimination and isolation. They're not necessarily where they need to be at this point. But then the question becomes, how much of a sliding scale do you feel comfortable with giving his high level playmaking dimension? He's
Sure.
never going to be Joe Burrow or Drew Brees or Tom Brady, but he makes plays that those guys can't make. And he does show flashes of working through progressions and processing. So the question is, can you live with the fact that it's not quite there yet? How much do you feel he can improve? We're not in the building every day. So when you say, what would I do? I would need to be in the building every day to know Justin Fields, the person, how he works, how he sees the game. Because say what you want, he's got big time talent now. I mean, big
Yeah.
time quarterback talent.
He does. And if you okay, you have the number one pick. If you go with Williams, Drake, whoever, you are passing on. I mean, how many good receivers has he had with the Bears? DJ Moore, pretty much in the Panthers trade. You're now saying, okay, we don't believe in Justin Fields to the point where we're going to pass up putting DJ Moore and Marvin Harrison Jr. on the field at the same time. So you're yeah. So in addition to how much do you want to just flip the whole script, there's also how much. Say you stay at one or you move down, you've got just ungot because you have the first pick and the 10th pick already. Think about what you can turn that into.
Right.
Um,
And
giving
and the defense, again, I think with Fields, you understand that there's certain things you need to go along with Fields because unless you think he's going to dramatically improve, there's some inconsistency to his game. So, what is it that you need with Fields? You need a very good defense. Clearly, the Bears over the last 7, 8 weeks have had a very good defense. You
yes,
want to keep building that. I can't believe they'll let Johnson walk at corner. We don't know that.
yeah.
Jervon Dexter has played really well as a rookie
They're not.
defensive.
They can't let Johnson. He's been one of the best corners in the NFL in the
I
last.
agree. So they're
Yeah,
and Tyreek Stevenson, who was one of my favorite corners
yeah,
coming out in this past draft, he's really played well. Smith, the rookie from Minnesota, has stepped in and played well. We know they spent a lot on linebackers, good players. This is a defense that will likely continue to get better. Okay, so now you keep building your O line, which is not bad, by the way.
yeah,
Herbert, I think, in the context of playing with Fields, can be your running back. Maybe you get another one, but he's pretty good. So now you need more receivers. You definitely want more depth on your O line for sure. But you can do all this in the draft. So if Fields is playing with a defense that's top 10, top 6 in the league, and with his dynamic ability where you don't need, Christian McCaffrey as your runner, because
Sure.
Fields gives you the run game element and forces defenses to play a certain way, and his playmaking ability is electric. Do you want to start over?
Well, my notes on this after I went back and rewatched Fields this morning against the Falcons, both positive and negative plays for the context of our discussion. He still has disconcerting moments with timing and accuracy. You'd like to see him throw with more of a comfortable sense of the timing of the down. Quite a few throws to be made against the Falcons where guys were schemed open, like pen, and Fields didn't turn the ball loose in time. This is the end of his third season, so I don't know how much you can correct or how
Right.
much that is just what he is.
Well, do you have specific plays? Because
Yes.
I felt there was one play that kind of crystallized the issue for
If I
Fields.
had hair, I would have been pulling it out. 8:23 left in the third quarter. Fields had Tyler Scott wide open on a stack release crosser against Atlanta's cover three. Falcons send a safety blitz with Jesse Bates the third. Bears pick it up. That's a clean pocket. And it's one of those throw it moments. Fields waits until Scott crosses the field, and then he overthrows Scott. And that's the kind of stuff that will just drive you crazy.
But he also made some really good throws.
30, well, here's the OMG part. The 32-yard pass to DJ Moore with 2:15 left in the first quarter on 3rd and 7. It's the kind of play that gives you hope. You want to hang on to this guy because Moore got open to Fields' backside on a switch release. Cornerback A.J. Terrell followed Moore from the slot, and Fields made a perfect throw. I mean, Moore just went like this, over his
Yep.
head. Boom. He could not have, it's the cliche, he could not have handed it to him any better. So
Yep.
that's the stuff where you go, if we can just build on that,
Yeah. So I mean, and the thing is, he doesn't turn it over. That's the
oh,
other thing. If you have a good defense, okay, and and as we said, with all these other things that hopefully you can improve if you trade number one and get all these draft picks, you know, again, I'm not taking a side here because I'm
no,
not in the building, so I
right.
don't know Justin Fields. All I'm saying is, do you want to start over? Because say what you want. You know how people start talking about these college quarterbacks. They talk about all of them like they're Hall of Famers the second they step into an NFL locker room. And it doesn't happen that way. So, do you want to start over? That's what you got to decide.
Well, I mean, whoever you like. I mean, I'm watching Michael Penix. I've been watching him all year because I'm up here. Make these ridiculous throws, NFL throws. He's going to be 24. He's got two ACLs. I mean, two torn ACLs. Everyone has two ACLs, hopefully. But these guys all have dings, even if you don't think they do.
Right. So, we'll see. It's
Yeah.
it's not it's not it's not easy. It's not easy.
No. Well, Greg, you are a rare ding-proof prospect, 5-star all the way. Thanks, as always, for your wisdom and insight. We'll be talking more X's and O's for the playoffs, baby, next week.